Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan. I'm at Pop Culture Comics in Overland Park, Kansas, and that means it must be time to count down, once again, my top 5 comic books for this week. Let's kick it off right now with a book from Dark Horse Comics. Here is my number 5 for the week. It's Lobster Johnson, number 1. If you love old 30s pulp detective and vigilante books, this is the one for you. And if you've never read one of those but always kind of wondered about them, you might also want to give this a shot. It's Mike Mignola, and he's a master at these kind of stories. Just look at that cover, the detective in silhouette with the title character gigantic and looming over him, a mysterious vigilante with a foreign mark on his hand and his eyes obscured behind yellow goggles. The name of the story, The Burning Hand, at the bottom is part of the artwork. This is an excellent throwback to those old stories, and a good one in its own right. A gang of thugs dressed up as Indians terrorizes the streets, and some unknown force takes them all out, their corpses found the next day with a weird symbol, the lobster claw, on their foreheads. We have a detective trying to get to the bottom of it, a female investigative reporter who no one wants to talk to trying to do the same thing, and the big mob bosses behind the Indian gang scared out of their minds not knowing what happened to their guys. And it's all under the backdrop of the Great Depression and Prohibition. In the traditional style, the title character is barely seen, but affects everything from the shadows. We know nothing about him from this first issue that we don't get from the cover. The story is driven by the working stiffs, and they're all pretty much archetypes right now, but they're all likable. Lobster Johnson gets one line right at the beginning. Taste justice, imposters! And that should tell you just what kind of book this is. And it's another Marvel heavy week this week. For my number 4 spot, it's Scarlet Spider, number 1. Here's a character I never really thought I'd see again, and I guess I was half right because it's not really the same character as before. The first Scarlet Spider was Ben Reilly, a clone of Peter Parker from the 90s Clone Saga epic who initially thought he was Peter Parker and later created his own spider mantle. This Scarlet Spider, of course, is another clone from that saga. In fact, originally one of the big bad guys during that story, Kane, an early failed clone created and then rejected by the Jackal. After the Queen brought Kane back in Spider Island and events in that story led to his losing his scars and looking normal again, now he's a wanted man on the run and trying to decide what the heck to do with himself. Above the title on the cover, it reads, "All of the power, none of the responsibility." And at first I didn't really like that, thinking, well, why would I want to read about a guy who just swings around abusing his power and not caring? But it's really not that at all. There are events that lead to Kane going from trying to be a hero to deciding that life isn't for him, particularly an incident involving an old lady almost getting hit by a truck that doesn't go quite as Kane planned. But while he consciously decides to shirk his responsibilities as a feeling human being with incredible superpowers, there are consequences already building because of that decision, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens to him because of his choices. I like that a brief recounting of his backstory is there in the middle, but it doesn't take up the whole issue. Most of it really is new story, and I have a lot of respect for not opening it right up with origin, but rather trying to hook us with an action scene that demonstrates what kind of a person Kane is before it delves into all that. And if you want to know more, there's a 4-page insert in the back that tells more about the Clone Saga and where this guy came from. I should also mention the eye-catching panel layouts, which are really varied and interesting, especially the 2-page spread with a set of panels configured to sit in front of a building Kane is walking on. Very strong first issue. And coming in at number 3 from DC, it's Batwoman, number 5. This is an extremely dense, involved, engaging, and haunting comic book. Even with all of Kate Kane's complex history, if you haven't tried this book out before but wondered about it, this isn't the worst jumping on point I've ever seen. On the first page, it recaps a lot of stuff very nicely. Now, I know I said I liked that Scarlet Spider didn't do that, but that was the first story in a new book, a new chapter for that character, and what exactly happened in his past isn't nearly as important as it is here. In this book, you're right in the middle of a plot line, and the writers are nice enough to make it possible for a new reader to pick it up. And if you're a regular reader, you could just skip that first page, as it's obviously a recap, but it's just so darn cool looking and well written, I doubt they mind it much. There's a mystical dead woman who's been stealing children, and Batwoman's trying to find them. The issue opens with her trying to fight this entity while it tries to make her feel guilty about her past, particularly involving her dead sister. The other half of the book deals with a really difficult decision Kate has to make, joining up with Director Bones, who wants to use her for a mission and promises to let her father off the hook with the police, or stay loyal to Batman. All the political intrigue is really well handled with a cool dose of mysticism, and the art is as detailed and captivating as ever. And coming in at number 2 this week, Mark Waid is kicking off a new crossover story between Daredevil and Spider-Man. Here he is, Amazing Spider-Man number 677. Well, Daredevil is one of Marvel's gems right now, so it's no surprise that Mark Waid filling in here for Slott and doing a Daredevil crossover story is all kinds of fun. He's still playing around with that whole pesky business about the world thinking Matt Murdock is Daredevil and trying to deny it, as Spider-Man just makes it worse for him by showing up out of the blue and telling Matt when he's out of costume that he needs his help as Daredevil right in front of Kristen. Oops. But Matt's awesome and just lets it slide off his back. I love the camaraderie between these two guys, and Wade is obviously having a blast writing them together. Peter has a ton of respect for Matt and wonders how he possibly can get along as well as he does after all the difficult things he's dealt with, not the least of which being a blind man. There's a great scene where the two leap off a building and race each other to the bottom. Wade also explores their strengths and weaknesses as superheroes and how the two can complement each other. He makes a really good case for Spider-Man and Daredevil being a duo. The case in question that Peter needs Matt's help with is Black Cat, who gets arrested for a break-in. She was caught on camera, but Peter knows she couldn't have done it because they were talking together when it happened. A whole lot going on here, and a whole lot of fun. And taking my number 1 spot this week, it's Wolverine and the X-Men, number 4. Geez, this is involved. You've got Wolverine trying to run a school, dealing with lack of finances, dealing with the conflict of interest of trying to teach mutant kids while going out after hours with X-Factor and ripping into people with his claws. Then you've got the return of Angel, who's lost his memory and thinks he's a real angel. Then you've got a kid who looks like Apocalypse, wrestling with who he is and his destiny. You've got guest lecturer Deathlock teaching a class on the future while all the students are holding textbooks called Days of Future Past. There's a hilarious bit where he tells all the students the exact probabilities of what they'll be doing in the future based on what he's seen there and all possible timelines which he can predict. And there are several other connected subplots with other students I won't even go into. It's so much fun to see the wackiness unfold in Logan's new school, but Jason Aaron is balancing that perfectly with the serious stuff. Questions about how inevitable destiny is, whether anyone can really control who they turn into, and whether anyone can change from who they were in the past. There's a lot of cool little details for X fans to catch in these highly involved panels, and the cliffhanger makes you wish the next issue came out along with this one. I was enjoying Uncanny far more than the series before, but they're on level footing for me this week. And now for a few honorable mentions. Here's New Avengers, number 20. A slam-bang action fest with the New Avengers versus the New Dark Avengers, Norman Osborn's team of bad guys who look like famous heroes like Scarlet Witch, Hulk, and Hawkeye. And Spawn, number 215. More major ground is covered here as Jim allows himself to come too far into the limelight, and there's a head-scratching revelation that makes it a lot clearer as to why Jim's background has been such a giant mystery. And finally, Buffy Season 9, number 5. Someone is using Slayer dreams to send Buffy a message. The question is this fairy-looking woman here to help, or does she just want to punish Buffy for taking magic away from the world? Well, hey, that's it for the countdown this week. I'll be with you once again next week for another top 5 list. If you're ever in the Kansas City area, will you check out Pop Culture Comics in Overland Park, Kansas? It's where I am at this very moment. If you happen to be watching this on the Pop Culture website, you can always check us out on YouTube. That's Geekvolution. That's youtube.com/Geekvolution. We do lots of other comic book and superhero-related videos. Check us out. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. You can also look us up on Twitter. That's @Geekvolution. And check out our website. We are geeksnotnerds.com. If you don't live in our area, be sure to check out your own local comic book store, and please support them if you have one. And thanks as always for watching. I'm Captain Logan, and happy reading.